Quilt branch, and this is Mary Jane Mattingly, also from the Quilt branch. And together we have designed the new Creative Grid ruler, the house ruler. So we're going to show you what it'll do. The premise of the ruler is that it will cut any 45-degree angle shape for a quilt up to a 4.5-inch strip or a 9.5-inch square. And so these are the shapes that we envision that the ruler will do, or the half square, quarter square triangles, the trapezoids, the house, the parallelograms, the trapezoid with 245 degrees, and diamonds and bars. So we're going to start with the half square triangle. This is designed so that you can work with traditional size strips. That most of your jelly rolls, things come with the traditional 1/2 inch added to the finished size of the pattern. So we're working with a 3.5 inch strip. What you do is you lay the ruler on the strip with the 3 7/8 inch line at the cut edge, and you will cut the 45-degree angle. Then turning the ruler around, now using the top measurement, you will put that tip at 3 7/8 and cut again. And so you can just keep 180 degrees, cut the next one, turn it around, and cut the straight edge. So each time you're going to get a triangle that has the flat edge and the pointed edge, because this has to be 3 7/8 inches long, but we don't need the rest of this triangle up here. So any place a half square triangle fits in, this is how you would cut it. On the ruler is a tiny black triangle that is 1/8 of an inch from the top of the tip, and that makes it possible to do the quarter square triangles. So with the quarter square triangle, you're also going to have a flat edge. When you cut the quarter square triangle, the first thing you're going to do is get a 45-degree angle. So you would cut another half square triangle to get started. So now this is usable for another project. But then with the ruler, you'll set that so that the tip of the ruler is just along the bottom edge, and so then this line is at 3 5/8, and you'll cut a 45-degree. Then the ruler can be turned 180 degrees. Again, the tip is just at the top edge, and you'll cut the next one. So this goes back and forth. Now we'll talk about trapezoids. The trapezoids, again, you're going to start with a straight edge this time, and most of your patterns will tell you how long the bottom, the long edge of the trapezoid needs to be. In this case, we're using 6 7/8. So I'm going to put the center line along the bottom of the ruler, the corner here at 6 7/8, and cut my 45-degree angle. Turn the ruler 180 degrees, measure out here to 6 7/8, and cut the top edge, the side there, the straight edge. And again, you're going to work yourself back and forth. For the left pointing trapezoid, now we're going to work with the bottom of the ruler. The same thing would happen is that you would, but this time the center of the ruler goes along the top edge. You're out here at 6 7/8, cut the 45-degree angle. Turn the ruler 180 degrees. Now we're going to use the bottom of the ruler. The tip is out here at 6 7/8, and you're going to cut the straight edge. Work your way across the strip as necessary. You can get the mirror images of those if you leave the strip folded. If you only need one direction, you have to be sure to open up the strip. The house is, we need to be sure that we cut the same amount of fabric from both corners of the house. So we're going to cut into 3 1/2 inch strips, and again, using the little black tip will go at the top of the strip, and in order to cut an equal amount from each side, I need about 6 more hands. If you look at these numbers, 1, 2, 3 here, I can center this between the 3 1/2 and the 3 1/2 have the bottom at 3 5/8, and I can cut the equal amount off of both sides of that house. So then I now know that my house is symmetrical. In a lot of patterns, you'll put a half square triangle on, and so these are the half square triangles that we cut, and of course the finished house once you have that. But we also have patterns where you can work with them with a quarter square triangle. So you would create this shape and this shape, and when sewn together, then it finishes up this way. Now we're going to work on to parallelograms. Again, right and left skewed parallelograms. And again, in order to get the original 45-degree angle, you're going to cut a half square triangle. And then you're going to work with this ruler with the center line along the bottom to get the left skew, and you're going to line up this with the finished size of this. In this case, these finish at 3 inches. You add 3/4 of an inch. So this is 3/4 of an inch, so you would measure out here to 3 3/4 and cut. And then you're just going to work your way across the strip. For the right skewed, now we're going to work with the bottom of the ruler. You're going to cut your half square triangle and do the same thing, measuring along the center line, the 3 3/4, and cut across the strip. With the trapezoid that has two 45-degree angles, again, you're going to start with a half square triangle in order to get your 45-degree angle. You're going to put, a pattern will tell you the long side measurement. So you will put the center line along the top. In this case, it's a 9 1/4, and cut the 45-degree angle. Then slide it down, use the center line along the bottom of the strip, cut the 45-degree, and again, work your way across the strip. Now we're going to show you some specialty shapes. The diamond from a rectangle is basically 2 houses. So you would set the ruler on the exact same way you did the house, with the tip on the edge of the rectangle, and cut off adjoining corners, and then do the same on the other end of the rectangle. The diamond from a square, we need to know what size the finished size of this triangle is going to be. In the case of our example here, this is a 1-inch finished triangle, so we're going to again use the tip to line this up, and then we're going to line this up with 1 1/4 inch and trim off. So that's finished size plus 1/4 of an inch, and trim off opposite corners of the square. For the barn, the math is the same. It's finished size plus 1/4 inch. This example happens to be a 1.5 inch finished. So you measure this and line this up with the 1 3/4 line on the ruler and trim off adjoining corners. So those are the shapes that the ruler cuts. We've designed the book 6 Halves Make a Whole sampler in 5 lessons. So you'll take, each lesson is a different color on this board. So there are 5 lessons to learn the shapes, and then in each lesson there is how to cut the shapes are in there again, the instructions for the ruler, and then each lesson has 2 blocks that the quilter will make, except when you're doing the house, there are 4 blocks. It's a 12-block sampler, and by the time they've learned all of the shapes, they've made 12 blocks. And so the entire quilt can be cut out with the house ruler except for the strips. And